Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you should give us a rating or review at iTunes or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to have a HillCon wrap-up. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
Hi, I'm Stargate Pioneer.
And I'm Steven Jondrew, and we're from Better Podcasting, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of the individual host.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in 3,
2,
1.
Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. I guess one quick announcement is that we have scheduled our next indie RPG day in Terre Haute at Game on South 7th, and that is going to be November 18th from 2 to 6. We're still working out what games we are going to be running there, but we are planning to bring 2 games to run again, and hope to see you guys there. So that'll be November 18th from 2 to 6.
One of them will probably be Tales from the Loop.
Oh, yeah? Right on.
I mean, that's what I was going to do last time. So.
And quick shout out to Michelle from the Starling Tribune, which is also part of the Gonna Geek Network. Had an awesome time meeting her and coming out and playing games with us, and had a great time. So it was really cool to sort of connect with another part of the network and play some games and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. So, all right. So as you heard, we're going to do a HillCon wrap up real quick. As for those of you that don't know, we have a sort of yearly mini convention here at our house that's just our sort of friends, and we all get together for 3 days of the most awesome gaming in Vermilion County, Indiana. I think it's probably a fair claim, I would guess. And this year we had 15 people. We played 5 RPGs and 3 different board games. And it's just a time for all of us to get together and sort of carve out a weekend specifically for gaming and get a lot of gaming done and just have a good time and hang out and good food and good friends and good games. And I know I've said it 100 times on this podcast before, but I really, really can't recommend enough for all of you guys out there to try and do this, because it's just a great time. And every time that we have done it, every year we've done it, we've sort of changed some things and made things a little bit better and had more fun. And it's something that all of us looked forward to throughout the entire year, it seems like, as we try to put things together and like, what kind of food are we having? Who's bringing drinks? What are you doing? All this kind of stuff. And it's just an awesome time. And yeah, I mean, work and life is stressful enough, and if you carve out a time to just have a good time, specifically.
There's something about just being together, and especially when you add food in, it just kind of tends to go with fellowship. So
right.
it has almost that holiday feel, but without the stress of having to buy anybody gifts.
Right.
It just feels good.
Well, and then it's different. So when we go to Gen Con or anywhere else, we're there with friends as well, but it's just not the same. It's different, because we're here at our house. It's more relaxed. There's no hotel to go back to or drive to make back or whatever. And it's just super chill and so much fun. And I know it's just something that I look forward to every single year. And yeah, I just think everybody should do it. So, because it's awesome and lots of fun. So there were 5 games that were ran this year, which is about par for the course usually. So we ran 2 different LOTFP games, a Dread game, Kids on Bikes, and Spirit of 77. So there's a really good sort of spread of different types and themes and tones of games. And it was a great time. So I ran, I think, Worms now, which has been I've ran about 6 times now, I think.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and it went a little slow at first, but I think it's come around now, and I'm ready to basically not run it anymore and sort of put it together. And that'll be going up on the Patreon as soon as all of the things out of my notebooks get put into a computer.
It makes it through the editing and review board.
But before it gets, I'll do layout and stuff on it as well. But before that happens, I'm just going to put it out as just a straight text file on the Patreon, because that'll be really easy to do, and it's a fun game, and I like body horror, and it's we've had really good feedback from it, so it's been a lot of fun. If you're curious about it, it's several episodes ago, somewhere in the 50s, I think. It's our creature feature episode that me and Lacey sort of brainstormed about some body horror and parasites and awfulness using Lamentations or any OSR or 5e system or whatever. So it was a lot of fun, though.
Oh, we even had one of our listeners play it with us at Gen Con.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I ran at the game store for this past week in Terre Haute. So it's been a good time. Isaiah, our oldest, is starting to run games a lot more frequently now, and he ran his own Lamentations game, which was very cool to see. So I sort of sorted through a bunch of one-page dungeons and had him pick the ones that he liked, and he ran his own LOTFP game for several of our friends as kids that were here that are all in that sort of 12 and 13-year-old range. And it was very nostalgic for me, for them like trying to find their own little space to do their gaming and whatever, and trying to shoo the younger kids away and do their own thing. It was very cool to see that. I don't know. It brought back a lot of cool memories for me.
I was pretty proud because, well, Kurt's daughter has done some gaming before and enjoyed it. When I talked to Dave and Haley, they have tried some RPG stuff with their son, but he gets like very anxious and gets kind of like analysis paralysis and gets like really weird about stuff. So they weren't sure that he was going to be able to, because I'd kind of mentioned something like, hey, does he role play or whatever?
Right.
But they were up here for several hours and no problem. And I know it's different when you're with somebody that's your own age and it changes things significantly. But I was like, hey, check that out.
It was really awesome. I thought it was very cool, and I meant to get some pictures of them. I came upstairs here to check on them, make sure that they were all good or if they needed anything, and they were all sort of like huddled around the table and super intense and gave me the look like, get out of here, you're slowing things down. And I was like, oh, I'm that guy now. I gotta go. I'm sorry. I should know better. Shame on me. So it was a cool moment. It was a lot of fun. It's different, I guess. I remember, my parents looking at me and my friends being like, what are you kids doing? This is so dumb. And sort of looking at them and having very clearly a different understanding of what was happening, but it just that same feeling of the way they looked at me, the way I was looking at my parents, like, get out of here. Stop it. You're ruining our fun right now.
Do you wonder if like that generation of role players is going to be kind of like the version of like Still Living with Your Mom, like your mom's coming over to play your RPG games. Like, no, Mom, you can't come over and play. Come on.
My gaming group is gone. I really thought it would be funny as, the sort of gaming generation, or however you want to say that, gets older. I'm in and out of nursing homes all the time, and they have all these little activities planned to keep them occupied and mentally stimulated. And I thought, man, if you could have like an RPG thing in a nursing home, it would be amazing. I wonder if they really looked into it, because like improving cognitive function and staying active and thinking and imagination, all this stuff says it's really good for you. I was like, that would be really cool if when I'm in a nursing home, if there's somebody that runs games, that would be awesome. So I don't know.
No, I've thought about it before too. I'm like, he's the activities director. All right, guys. Sunday is cosplay day.
So
go ahead and go to your neighbor's room and see what you can find.
Right on. Is there anything particular about the LOTFP stuff that we did that you thought was cool, or things that were different? Because you played in that one, didn't you?
Yeah, in the worms thing. But I don't know. I played it a lot. I try to kind of take a back seat as much as possible. Yeah. But a lot of the ones that I've been in have gone a very similar direction. So then, you kind of always wonder, it's like, okay, well, is that because I'm here? Or is that just
a piece of me?
I feel like the natural progression is kind of there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but although with this one, we didn't even get into the whole like midwife or anything. We pretty much just stayed like at the mine and the mining campground area.
Yeah, that didn't happen in the game in Terre Haute as well. And that was sort of a time thing. I could have extended the scenes of trying to cleanse the town from the infection, but it was one of those choices where the game is going and it's sort of reaching a natural. The climax has sort of happened, and we're sort of on the back side of that now. And I thought, well, if that doesn't happen at the climax or just before or just after it, it seems to lose a little bit of the impact using the midwife as a vector of transmission or whatever. So I sort of backed up off of it and didn't include it either, because we were just sort of naturally winding down. And then time-wise as well, we were sort of coming up on our 4-hour mark at the game store. And I was like, all right, start to reel it back in. So
I thought it was kind of funny in this one, like I know it's the natural stereotype to think of your male gamers going into the city and being like, yeah, beer and whores and whatever. But our game had 2 women in it and 2 men. And so then we were like, shore leave. Yeah, basically the exact same thing, but women folk. Then you're at the mining town and you're like, well, all these men are sick. We must go underground. It's just silliness, really.
So we had our first experience with kids on bikes, And we've played lots of games that are similar to it, and it was fun. It was a cool game, but I gotta say, you're gonna only playing it once. I kind of think that I prefer Tales of the Loop a little bit better, but I also have played that a lot more, so I'm a little more familiar with the way it works. But it does have a lot of cool aspects to it in the way you sort of build your neighborhood or whatever and all that.
I don't want to like crap on anybody's game, and I thought Kids on Bikes that some of the character creation aspects I really liked. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff like the NPC like labeling and creation and stuff, it just didn't seem to sync well. I know we had a difference of opinion as far as game mechanic goes.
Yeah.
Because your stats are basically what you're really good at, you roll a d20 for, and what you're really bad at, you roll a d4 for that, and you don't like the spread that you end up with. But I like the fact that I get to use all the polyhedrals. That is one
I agree.
Aspect for me. And I also like the imbalance in a game where you're playing children, because you haven't had a chance to get better at the things that you suck at.
Well, I do agree. In a game
it's
where
more relying on natural talent than skill development thus far in your life.
Well, I do enjoy game so I totally agree with the polyhedral things, because I that's one of the things that I don't like about Fate, and it's a silly thing to not like about it. It's a great game. I like it. It's fun, but I like having all my dice. You know, I like having the D20, the D12, whatever. Ooh, what's it going to be? And I like that part. But and at the same time, I also like games where you can have this sort of crazy swing of success versus failure, right? Mm-hmm. But in that game, it's an investigation game, because you're trying to solve some kind of mystery or whatever. And a lot of those kind of games, you don't get to roll the dice a whole lot, so you don't get the full spectrum of this was a crazy success and this was a crazy failure. You don't get that full swing. Now, in our game, we also had several people, so when you have more people, you do less rolling as an individual because the rolls are sort of spread out. So there were some just conditions that were happening at our table that sort of changed things a little bit. I mean, I had a great time. It was a fun game. It's just I was kind of looking at it, and it's sort of one of those things when you have a game and another game that's very similar to it, that it's hard to
well, naturally you're going to compare the two, and they came out within like a really year of each other. So and then I think there was like even another RPG of a similar kind of vein, well, basically after Stranger Things happened, but Tales from the Loop came out almost they must have been working on that before, that came out. Yeah, just comparing the two. But I don't mind the D6 system for Tales from the Loop. I know Lee was kind of questionable about succeeding only on a 6, but one of the things that another big difference I noticed was in Kids on Bikes, you are given an extra token when you fail that you can then spend later. It sort of reminded me of kind of the burning wheel system in that aspect, because they're the only two I know that give you any kind of benefit with failure.
Oh, with failure. Yeah.
So you get this token, but then anytime you want to use any of your abilities, or you want the thing I didn't like was that you had to spend something to help someone else do something. I didn't like that. So I kind of like Tales from the Loop better, where you can just say, I'm going to help. And as long as you can, in the story, justify how you're doing that, you get the extra die to help people succeed. So that seems more cooperative, like a kid's thing kind of could be.
Well, it sort of fits in that theme of the Goonies or Stranger Things, where really the premise of why they succeed is because they are a group and they do work together. And so, I don't know, I feel like, at the same time, comparing them seems, like you said, logical because they're very similar in tone, but the way the games kind of work is very different.
But the theme is so very similar.
Yeah, I agree. So like Kids on Bikes is very focused on this one little neighborhood and street, and I really like that part of the game. That was very cool. Whereas Tales from the Loop, I think it's sort of like it can very easily be much bigger. You know what I mean? And
the only thing I didn't know that I didn't look up, and I probably should have, was what the cost would be to get Tales from the Loop versus the cost for Kids on Bikes.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously Simon, I think it's Stalsberg, I'm always afraid I'm going to say the name wrong, but is an artist. Yeah. And so the artwork for Tales from the Loop is phenomenal. Oh, and just the production quality that goes with Modifius is
very high, but it is more expensive. It's a full size.
I'm sure it must be, but I didn't look at the actual cost breakdown is all I'm saying. Right. So
it was a good game though. I had fun playing it. It's not something...
absolutely. I think it was completely Dave's decision, but he included an old person in his games. So it's like all these kids, and then there was like this 80-year-old dude that was like the neighbor. Right. It's like, well, that's kind of. He wasn't 80. I'm exaggerating, but he was old.
Yeah, it was a fun addition to the game. It was sort of like this old mentor figure that was half crazy, half whatever, and Haley did a good job of sort of interjecting that character in at the right spots to sort of like, hey.
Yeah, you'd have to have the right player that's really like a go-getter for action. You couldn't
Right.
give that to your sit back and, kind of person, but...
So I had a good time. It was an interesting experience. It's a game that we had never played before, so it was interesting to sit down to play a game that we had no experience with whatsoever. It was a lot of fun. Do you want to talk about Dread?
No.
No?
So the Dread thing I just kind of ran, I'm not going to say off the cuff completely because I did give the idea some thought, but I hadn't completely fleshed it out yet. Like I didn't already have the character surveys. It was a mix of questions that I wanted to ask you guys and questions I pulled directly out of the Dread book from the bottom. I was like, oh, this kind of fits and sounds interesting. Let's see what we end up with there. But the basic idea was kind of a space odyssey... No.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, there we go. I had the right words. They were just all jumbled in the wrong order.
With HAL 5000.
I haven't ran a lot of sci-fi games, and I'm pretty good with the haunted house horror and and I've done the Bluebeard's Bride horror and seance and ghosts and possession and all of that. So I was like, what haven't I done?
More like classic fundamental horror, right? The
So I was
building
like-
blocks of horror.
Yeah, where I'm like, how about lonely sci-fi space horror? That's what I want to do. Then I was trying to kind of make it a little bit more realistic. So it's not like Star Trek or like Firefly space. Like it's like 2001 Space Odyssey space. Like it's reasonable and very much...
And the way technology has gone, like that, makes it even more believable now with some sort of AI and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of what I would call boring sci-fi if it wasn't for the horror element, right? Like there's nothing fantasy or cool happening here.
No,
it's all very believable.
Sanitary and
Right.
clean, smooth metal and buttons and toggles and yeah.
Boring sci-fi.
I thought I know you basically have ran almost no sci-fi, at least for me. I think there's been one maybe that you've done that I've been around for that was a sci-fi game, and
that was going to turn into Planet of the Apes, though, so that's not boring sci-fi. That's
not boring sci-fi. I'm just saying sci-fi in general, though.
And I don't even know that it counts because I mean it does, but I crashed you guys on an alien planet, so it wasn't like you were in space.
Right,
you were on a very Earth-like planet. It was more like terror in the jungle.
Right. But it was interesting because I could see how it felt very sci-fi and it felt very 2001. But at the same time, when you were doing things and making things like the way you described scenes and the way we progressed through the space station that we were in, it was very much a haunted house game, but not a haunted house game. Yeah. And that's the trick of that space thing is that when you conceptualize the space station as the haunted house, that's the area like in a haunted house. The whole thing is you're trapped inside the haunted house. You can't go out. And that's exactly what is happening inside a space station. You can't just go outside. You know, it's the perils of space and death and vacuum, right?
Well, and the idea of artificial intelligence is so very intriguing because once you realize not only are you in space and isolated, but every single piece of data about everything in your world is stored and manipulated by a computer.
Right.
So if any of that information can be given to you falsely and you automatically take it at face value, then that changes your entire perception of what reality is.
Right.
And so it makes it so much easier to manipulate you guys because you never consider this person's completely honest. Obviously, the computer is lying to me. No, computers don't lie.
Right.
Obviously, if there's something off, the human is lying to me. Humans lie. That's what they do. And then so I added in just and also one of the crew members is an artificial intelligence as well. I left the option open to you as to whether or not you wanted everybody to know out the gate. And I don't know. Why did you choose no?
So I chose no because I thought it would be more interesting if they didn't know. With the idea being that I would make it come out at some point in the game.
Right.
That was the whole idea behind it, was that I knew something will happen at some point in the game and everyone will find out. So I had to kind of like play some of my scenes towards that, to where I was acting sort of a little bit unnatural and whatever. And then...
Which you did a very good job of, by the way.
Yeah, so
I was thoroughly amused.
Well, I thought it was fun to play on the idea between being just some sort of weird scientist, because I was like an experimental physicist of some crazy weird ilk, and I did math calculations for fun and all this kind of weirdness and whatever. And It worked well, and I like the way that you sort of played against it as well. Like at first you didn't. At first it was like I felt like it was more you seeing what I was going to do with it, and then once you saw the direction I was going, it was like, okay, let's run with this. And you also, I was the only person that got asked a question on a sheet of paper in secret. And initially I had told you should make everyone else a question when you write this up so that it isn't just one person. And as we sat here talking about during the pre-show, I actually think that maybe you shouldn't, because one of the points you made is there was a small PvP element in a Dread game, which is very, very dangerous. And I don't think that would have existed had you asked each person a secret question, because if very clearly they, at a meta level, they knew something's wonky here. Mm-hmm. And it's a haunted house, horror game, sci-fi thing, whatever happening. And everybody's already on edge anyway. So then anything else that sort of artificially does that puts it even more over the top. And I don't think that we would have had the same result. I think it would have been a good game, but I think it would have been different had you asked everyone else some kind of secret question.
And I kind of wondered about giving you the option as to whether or not you wanted people to know out the gate that you were AI or not.
I agree. But I don't think it should know.
No, I disagree, because I feel like that there is enough... not question, but there's enough suspicion that you would reach the same conclusion in the end for most people, but it would just take longer. I think when you leave it a secret, it's like, it's almost immediately to blows. But I feel like the seed of suspicion with you being an AI would be there either way.
Right.
It's just a little bit more sudden and potent when it was a secret to begin with.
Right. Right.
So,
I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It'd be interesting to see the way it would play out otherwise. And then depending on who's playing and what characters could change everything entirely as well, and what sciences they choose to be part of or whatever. It's a very cool and fun game, and I had a lot of fun. And Dread is always fun. And we posted some pictures on Twitter, and I don't know if we shared them on Facebook or not. I'll put them up there here soon if we didn't. But I am wicked good at Jenga, and my nephew kept coming at me. In Dread, the way it works is that if you're going to take an action against a player...
The player versus player is very serious when it comes to physical combat. Like,
right. So you go pull for pull, basically. Mm-hmm. So you can say either I am not going to make a pull, and you can whack me, and something bad happens to me or whatever, or you can just keep going pull for pull. Well, I'm crazy good at Jenga, and I'm probably not the person you want to go pull for pull with. And I mean, not to say that I never knock the tower over, because sometimes I get a little too confident, and I try to make pulls that I definitely shouldn't be, but whatever. And, well, you don't come at the AI. The android will kill you. It's been established in Promethean and several other movies. So it was very cool. It added a different element that we hadn't ever experienced in a Dread game before. Because in most Dread games we've been in, it's very much everybody's on team survival, and it changed things a lot, and it added a different thing. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time.
The other interesting thing about doing a sci-fi game in space is, if you have somebody who's not good at something on the ground, you can kind of fake it or kind of muck about or call for help, or maybe just sort of go somewhere else. But like, if there's only one person that can fly the ship,
well, yeah, very definitely.
That's a pretty serious deficit. Like, if there's only one person that knows how to fix the engine control core, the central core, if there's only one person that knows how to adjust the atmosphere that you're breathing, pretty serious problem if something happens to them. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting.
Well, it changes everything. It changes the dynamic of the game of how much you're willing to put a person at risk, because it was, well, we can't send the pilot out here. He's the only one that can do the piloting. So, well, you're not essential for what has to happen. So you get to go outside and examine the sensory array or whatever it is.
The other thing that I found interesting, because like I said, I don't run a lot of sci-fi games. When you're running a sci-fi game, your technobabble needs to be on point. There was a lot of lagging where I was like, I don't know, the sensory array is not functioning. Like,
Did you really thought so? You weren't?
Gamma radiation. Yeah, like, I don't know. I was just kind of like, I felt like I was floundering a little bit, because, I can come up with enough sciencey terms because I kind of like science, but like sometimes when you guys would ask pointed questions, well, like, what exactly does it say? And I'm like, sciencey stuff.
I didn't think it was that at all. I barely noticed it. I just assumed it was the way when you ask a person who's running a game a question that they aren't prepared for, It was the normal amount of pause that you would have with that. So I didn't think it was any kind of anything. I just thought you're considering.
Maybe that's just my own insecurities.
Yeah,
then.
I think it totally is, because I thought, to me, it was just like, okay, this is the part where you consider the options, and then you give us something to run with. I didn't seem out of the ordinary at all.
It would flow smoother for me if I had like a table or just like a list of terms I could refer to and be like, okay, well, this thing.
Right on.
I kept thinking like, man, Kurt would know exactly what to say right now with his Hubble spacecraft game.
It's
what is it called?
Kerbal Space Program is what it's called.
Not Hubble, Kerbal. Something with a bull.
Right. All right, so the last game that we ran and played was Spirit of 77, and I ran a very short session of Disco Ambulance. I ran it at in Terre Haute at one of our indie game days, and had a great time running Spirit of 77. And I thought, what better game to run and play when it's really late at night and everybody's sort of a little slap happy, and we've had, a few drinks or whatever, and having a good time and laughing and smoking and joking, that kind of thing. And
basically the Monkey Fun Studios niche.
Yeah, essentially is really what it is. Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. We didn't play for very long. I think we only played maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, because it was getting really pretty late. And
I'm really proud to say that 0 patient care happened during that entire scenario.
True
there
story.
There was none.
Right. Well, it's so much fun because the wackiness of 70s movies and television that, it's just so over the top and ridiculous. And embracing that completely with both arms, and really, like, when the person running the game and the players are all on board with that style of game, I don't know that it is possible to have more fun with a specific theme and style of game. Like, you could have the same amount of fun with something, but like, if you want ridiculous, awesome, funny, great moments, suspense, drama, all the craziness, I just feel like that there is nothing better than Starsky and Hutch meets Barbarella. It's just unbelievable. It doesn't even
quite cover it, though, because the animal companion thing has been used both times I've played it. Yeah. And it adds such an element of perfection.
A little bit of Hawaii Five-0 going on in there. I don't know. It's just so much fun. And what
was their ambulance call sign? Because it was really good. It was kind of like sanctified, but it was not.
Sacrilegious? No. Sacrilegious.
Yeah, that's what it was. Sacrilegious.
So yes,
that is perfect.
So the premise of the game is that you work for B&D Ambulance Company, and it's one of the questions that gets asked is, why are you called the Disco Ambulance? So we had 6 players, so there are 3 ambulance crews, and I had them each make their own call sign for when they get on the radio, and then also a call sign for their truck for when dispatch is hitting them up. So everybody takes their sort of character concepts, and it's that sort of like natural thing that happens, because in the time I ran it at the game store, the exact same thing happened where people combined their sort of concepts together. And Sacrilegious was the holy roller, and the other character was... What were they?
He was a Kung Fu master. I don't remember what the other part was. But.
Some sort of Kung Fu. Oh, Stuntman Kung Fu Master, I think is what it was. Or Specialist Kung Fu Master. So it couldn't have gotten any better. It just seemed to scream 70s. Like, quite literally, 1972 called, and they have a pilot show for you to shoot involving these 2 characters on an ambulance. It's called Sacrilegious. Yeah, I just couldn't get any better than that.
Okay, so I've got a burnout priest with a pet raccoon who wears a cross, and also a Kung Fu master stuntman driver. He's going to drive the ambulance. Sold.
I feel like it's one of those games. So Apocalypse World is sort of its own monster to tackle, right? And it's kind of hard to transition from a more traditional game into the PBTA world, right? Because of the way the succeed at a cost kind of works, Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's harder to do that in a game that's more serious. So a game like Mashed, or a game like Bluebeard's Bride, or even just plain old Apocalypse World, because they're a little bit more serious games, right? But in a game that is completely ridiculous, succeed at a cost is just too easy. It's just, I feel like it's an easy way to sort of conceptualize the way PBTA kind of works. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And it's just so much fun. It's an easy icebreaker game. If you want to introduce people to gaming, I think it's a great way to do it too, because You just choose a couple playbooks, pick some moves, and you're off to the races, basically. And it's super thematic, and everybody gets it. It's just ridiculous fun. I just can't say enough good things about it. It's not a game that I want to play every game.
Nobody understands actually working on an ambulance, but everybody understands TV appropriate ambulance drama.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then that game, with you there. What sold me on that running that game was I knew that I could run a wacky 70s rescue style TV show game with Roy and all that kind of stuff, right? Be great and easy. And then when I read that, and then one of the first questions is for the players is, how did you fake your way through medical training? And I thought, this is done. This is the greatest scenario adventure game idea ever, because you're playing completely incompetent paramedics running around in the 70s, just causing mayhem and, a trail of disaster behind you everywhere you go. And I feel like that is exactly what that show, if it existed, would be. It's just perfect. It's just perfect. So I'm looking forward to running Wrath of the Con, and it's CON, and you play actors at a sci-fi convention from some movie or whatever.
Like Galaxy Quest style.
Basically. And I don't know what the premise of what the adventure is, but there's something happening that you have to do or whatever, and it looks like a lot of fun. So I think I'm going to pick that one up. And it's an easy game. You don't have to buy the pre-made stuff for it. It's an easy game to run regardless if you watch basically Barbarella and I don't know, any 70s TV show.
Barbarella has become your go-to for every fucking thing.
70s, okay. So I love...
It's not like Disco Ambulance at all.
No, but the wackiness of it is, though. The way over the top part of it and all that,
Meh.
Well, there's an X-Tech element in that Disco Ambulance that we never got to that is kind of that way, with some super technology that can exist in it or whatever. But I guess I just have a secret love of Barbarella. It's not so secret.
It is not a secret.
It's an open...
Everyone is aware.
It's an open love of Barbarella and Disco, and it's okay. It's okay. Right on. So the board games we played?
Basically, we had a real hard love of Madagascar games this go round because Meeple Circus and Room 25 are very far apart on the game spectrum, but both by the same publisher.
Right, yeah.
Meeple Circus is just my new love, right? It's so lighthearted, and you're just like stacking circus performers, and it's like thematic and fun, and things are colorful, and it's just a good time.
Well, I like it as well, but for a sort of a different reason. I like sort of competing against myself. I played it last time, and I got a guy this high, and this is what I built. And I like sort of trying to, even if I'm behind on the scoreboard, which I'm usually not, I like sort of trying to do a little more and trying to get a little more creative and get the acrobats stacked higher and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think it's interesting because I found that no matter who we play with, whether they're like hardcore gamers or brand new gamers, there's some strategy as far as point attainment, but then there's also just some stacking to make things look symmetrical and pretty that happens.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just like really funny.
Yeah, it's an easy go-to game, so it's a lot of fun.
And then Room 25 is always just awesome.
Yeah, if you want some sci-fi horror suspense and you like Room 25 or think you might, you should watch a movie called The Cube, and it is amazing. It's sort of where the premise of that game, I think, probably came from. I don't know for sure, but if it didn't, man.
Apparently, it's appropriate for 7 and 8-year-olds.
So it's a good show. It's an awesome movie.
Hey, Mom, they're like, oh, yeah, we watched that. No, you didn't. And they started describing it to me. Okay, well, apparently you watched The Cube, guys. That's cool.
All right, well, I think we're going to wrap this one up here. Can't say it enough, and I know probably everybody's tired of hearing me say it, but I really, really, really think that everyone should just get together and pick a weekend once a year and get everybody together and play some awesome games and have some good times. It's so much fun and such a great stress relief and just a great way to get friends together that oftentimes life gets in the way and things are too busy and you can't get together. But if you pick a specific time and you can just sort of get together without all the pressures of a convention or anything happening and just have a good time and hang out and play games, and it's just awesome. If you submitted questions to our episode 100, pay attention to your email, your DMs on Facebook or Twitter, wherever you submitted your question, and we will be hitting the winners up and announcing those on our Halloween episode next week and sending out syringes and some awesome Just One More Fix swag. And speaking of Halloween, our next episode will drop on Halloween, so we are going to put together our heads and try and brainstorm a horror game. And the last time we did it, it turned out pretty good, and it sort of birthed worms. Hopefully this next one we do won't suck. So we'll see how that goes.
We're going to do an actual horror game? I thought you just meant talking about horror gaming. I'm much more excited about this idea now.
Yeah, no, brainstorm another horror game, like a creature feature, not necessarily a creature feature, but like how we did the last one, right? Because that was episode 55, and that's been a long time ago now.
We should do vampire.
And so we will be brainstorming some sort of horror game for Halloween. And just another quick plug for our Indie Game Days in Terre Haute, November 18th from 2 to 6. We will be there running games. And as you know, we are members of the Gonna Geek Network, and I don't have the promo stuff for me in front of us right now, but you guys should definitely go out and check out.
Don't go out. You don't have to go anywhere. You download it in your house. Listen to it in your underwear if you want. We don't care.
And listen to the Starling Tribune or the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast with Michelle, and they are a member of the Gonna Geek Network as well, and check them out. You can find them at gonnageeknetwork.com or anywhere fine podcasts are purveyed, whether that's iTunes or Google Play or whatever. I'm stretching my word limits today. All right, well, I think that'll do it for us this week, and hopefully we will see you guys on Halloween. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.